this is Miss Roll here. This week we are going to talk a little bit about some new terms involving chemistry. So we're going to get into that here in a second. But we are going to do it using two very basic items that chances are good you might have sitting around in your own kitchen. And these are two things that are really, really versatile, meaning they can be used for lots and lots of different purposes, but also they give us a really good introduction to what a chemical reaction is. So to start off, a chemical reaction, if you think about the word reaction, it is where we have two different chemicals or more. You mix them together somehow, and they start swapping what elements are in that particular compound or item. And so this reaction that we're going to see is between vinegar and baking soda. These are two things that you've probably seen in a classroom before, might have in your own house. You are welcome, in fact, encouraged to try this at your own house to see the reaction in person. I will include in this video a zoomed in picture of the reaction happening so you can make some really good observations. But this is a basic reaction. You might know it as the volcano reaction. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in that reaction, first of all, and then why these two magic items can clean almost everything in your house. So let's start off with the fun part, the reaction. So I have just a little vase here, already filled up with lots of baking soda. I'm hoping for a nice mess for this reaction. And then in my cup, I've already put some vinegar, simply because this is a big jug and it's kind of hard to pour. So let's go ahead and take a look at our reaction. So immediately I got lots of bubbles. I hope you could hear that sizzle. That's lots and lots of gas being produced through our reaction as it's fizzing out. And now I'm making a really nice big mess for us. So this reaction is one, very visual, meaning we can see that there's a reaction happening, right? Neither the vinegar or the baking soda before was fizzing and bubbling and expanding like this. That is something that happened because of the reaction. So those bubbles forming is one way that we could tell that a reaction has happened. Now these two items, our vinegar and our baking soda, are what we call an acid and a base. Chances are really good you're already familiar with the idea of an acid. You might know it as something that can like eat away at things, right? You might imagine like metal just melting, it looks like, right, in an acid. And while that kind of thing can happen with some really, really strong acids, that's not always the case with an acid. But here we have actually vinegar is acetic acid and it's diluted, meaning most of what's in here is actually water. I believe the vinegar that we buy at the store is like 5% acetic acid. So 5% is actually the acid, 95% of it is water. So it's pretty diluted because this is a fairly strong acid. And I'm going to start using that term pretty often, a strong acid or a strong base. And a way to think about a strong versus a weak one is kind of like how much weight a person can lift. So a weaker person, like myself, maybe the most I could lift would be 50 pounds, okay? That would be a weak example. Whereas a strong person maybe can lift 300, 400 pounds. Same sort of deal when we're talking about the strength of acids or bases. It's kind of how much they react, how significantly they react. And you will learn a lot more about that when you get to actual chemistry. But we want to give you an idea of what that means. And when we talk about the strength of acids or bases, water is in the middle. So we consider water to be the neutral. In the center, nothing else, it's in the middle. So then this acid would be pretty far away from water. And then we have baking soda here, which is a base. When we talk about acids and bases, they're basically opposites. Okay, think of them like opposites. And so when we have them together, they form this reaction, just like we saw with all the bubbles and the stuff spilling all over my counter. there's a couple of ways to kind of figure out if something might be acidic or it might be basic. This by no means is a way to determine everything. But in general, acids tend to have that kind of sour taste if you were to taste them. If you're in the chemistry classroom, we never taste things. But if you have some vinegar at your house that your family maybe uses for cooking, go ahead and give it a try. See what it tastes like. You might have just white vinegar like is in this jug. You might have a lot of other kinds of vinegar. So I know there's apple cider vinegar and rice wine vinegar and balsamic vinegar. And there's a bunch of different kinds. And basically that's just where did the acetic acid come from. It's kind of what sort of a reaction produced it is where we get the different kinds. But if you have some at your house in a kitchen, go ahead and try it. If your family is using this for cleaning, don't try from that container. Just let's not do that. Okay? Baking soda is a base, again, like I said. And bases have a tendency to have more of like a bitter sort of taste to them. Other ways to tell the difference is oftentimes bases, when they're in a liquid form, are kind of, they feel slimy almost. So that if you ever had like baking soda all dissolved in water, you might kind of get that kind of greasy, slimy sort of feel to it. That is a general characteristic of bases. So other than our examples of an acid and a base, what is acids and bases in general, right? I mentioned that they're opposites, but what are they? So basically, an acid is something that has this hydrogen and it wants to, or it's willing to get rid of it. And a base is something that has this OH, oxygen and hydrogen together, and is willing to get rid of that. Altogether, we end up with water, H2O, which I mentioned is kind of that neutral in the middle. And that is what we are left over with after our vinegar and baking soda reaction. So that's one of the chemical characteristics of an acid and a base. Again, you'll learn much more about this if you get into chemistry later on. Now to talk about how our acids and our bases, or our vinegar and baking soda, can be used to clean lots and lots of things. So vinegar over here is really good for cleaning anything that's like a greasy mess. So let's say you made burgers and you got a bunch of the grease kind of burned on the bottom of your pan or something. Vinegar would be something awesome to react then with that greasy stuff and get rid of it. Vinegar is one thing that I would not suggest using on anything that's like a natural stone. So if you have countertops that are like marble or granite or something, don't use vinegar on it because it is a fairly strong acid. If you put some on your hand, you'll kind of notice that it itches a bit and it dries things out. So don't use it on that stone because it can start to make that stone not last as well. But the reason that vinegar does so well on those greasy things is because those greasy sorts of items are overall usually basic. They are a base, kind of like our baking soda. And so because we have those two opposites coming together, they create that reaction to get things off. Now you might be saying, but Miss Roll, I know that we've used baking soda to get rid of it. That's true. It can also work for some of these greasy things, but for other reasons. So that's another nature of baking soda specifically, not just of bases in general. So the reason that baking soda works so well on greasy things is that first of all, it absorbs. So it will kind of suck up some of the water and other liquids that are in that greasy item to help let it get off of the surface. The other thing is things that are similar, like a base and a base, will dissolve in each other. So it is kind of dissolving that greasy buildup or whatever you're trying to get off into the baking soda, whereas this one is reacting with it to form something different to get it off. So two different purposes, both are awesome for cleaning. Another reason that baking soda can be wonderful is because if you feel it, if you ever like get some between your fingers, it kind of has this gritty texture to it. And it's kind of like little tiny particles, right? So those little tiny particles that are kind of scrubbing for you. They do some of that scrubbing, right? Because they're grimy and against that surface. So that's a really awesome feature of baking soda. Now, one thing you see and hear people doing a lot is using the reaction of our vinegar and baking soda to try and clean things. So I told you that these are opposites, and that in the middle of our opposites of our acids and bases is water. So most of what you are left over with after reacting vinegar and baking soda, it's just water. So it's not the best way to clean. The thing that actually does cleaning in that situation, other than some leftover vinegar or some leftover baking soda, is the bubbles. So because they're reacting, they're trying to form those little gases, those little bubbles. They're lifting up some of the material that you're trying to clean up with it. So that is actually something that could be really helpful for, say, a stain that's really set into your clothes. So if you've ever been outside playing and you got like a grass stain on your knees or something, vinegar and baking soda would be helpful in that because it would create those bubbles to push the stain out. The way I would do it is rub some baking soda on it first, then pour some vinegar. Baking soda kind of starts to bind with it. Vinegar will help wash it away. These two things are something that are super easy to find, pretty darn cheap, and you might already have in your house, and you can clean just about everything with it. Vinegar can also be great for if you have any like hard water stains, so like around a faucet or a shower head, if water's not coming out of them as well. Fill up a bag with vinegar, tie it around there, and leave it for a couple of hours. You'll notice that the water flow is a lot better later on. Again, these two items are easy for us to find, and they're something that can clean almost everything in our houses. One quick note to say about cleaning with vinegar or baking soda is they don't actually necessarily kill all of the germs. So while you might think, well, vinegar, it's an acid, right? It can kind of corrode things. It's dangerous, maybe. Just because it's an acid doesn't mean that it's going to kill any germs. So if you're worried about cleaning up, trying to prevent the spread of germs, use a cleaner that's actually designed for that or something with bleach in it. Vinegar is not guaranteed to be a germ killer. Those germs are pretty pesky and they can survive a lot of things, vinegar included. If you want to try this reaction between vinegar and baking soda at home, one thing I suggest giving a try is if you happen to have, say, a pop bottle and a balloon, put your vinegar and baking soda in the pop bottle and then quickly put the balloon over the top. What you'll end up noticing is that that balloon starts to inflate with all the gas that's being produced. It's one good way to show that those bubbles aren't just, nothing. They're actually a bunch of gas that's being released by the reaction. Before we wrap up this video, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about how these last couple of weeks of school are going to work. So this week you had this video to watch and you had an assignment to fill out with some of your observations, as well as looking up a couple of our new science terms or our vocabulary. Basically, the next 3 weeks, the same thing is going to be your task, your assignment. We might also add some discussion posts where you need to talk to some of your classmates. But for the most part, it's going to be about watching a video and completing this assignment. Now, this is not going to just be a video that Miss Roll or one of your other teachers has made. It is a video that you get to choose. So I'm compiling a list of a bunch of different YouTube videos that are answering some of those questions that you might have submitted at the end of our Ed Puzzle last week. So if you submitted a question, know there will be a video that answers your question or that is on the topic that you asked for. If you have any other ideas of things that you would like to be learning about in these next few weeks, please Schoology message, email me, post it in this assignment. Let me know what those things are so that I can find videos on those topics as well. You had to do this video this week. In the future, you will get to look through the list of different options and pick one. So you're not going to do all of the videos. You will not have to watch all of them. But you get to find some of these science topics that seem interesting and exciting to you. And I really hope that you learn something and enjoy this particular experience.